Hey everybody, this is Brian with Focus Sound Entertainment here to serve all your live streaming needs. Please be sure to subscribe to Save Our Sons Huntsville, our YouTube channel. Drop a link, share this out there for everybody to tune in on all your peeps on social media. We appreciate you tuning in.
Oh no. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Save Our Sons, Father and Sons edition. We're so happy that you guys have tuned in tonight. Um, there's a lot of unrest in the world right now, and I know a lot of people have a lot to say. We started this organization for sons, so in a sense, we're going back to square one tonight. We have some very impactful fathers from our own community as our special guest tonight, and we are going to get a glimpse of what's going on in the world through their eyes as well as their son's eyes. So we ask that you guys just sit back and enjoy yourself tonight. Invite your friends to tune in. And without further ado, I introduce you to Toya Papa.
Well, thank you so much for that intro, April. We want to just say hello and thank you to everybody who's joining us via our live stream. Brian Carpenter, DJ Fui, we thank you so much for your service that you provide through Focus Sound and Entertainment. Before we get started in our program, I want to ask Pastor Alex Shipman to lead us in prayer. And Pastor Alex, thanks for being with us tonight. He is accompanied by his son, Trayson. So, Pastor Alex, if you would just pray over this evening, we would greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, we are grateful that you are Lord and King and that you are still upon your throne. And we thank you that you are our friend, you are our Savior and our Redeemer. And I pray that you will use this panel discussion to be a blessing to your people, even those who don't know you may tune in and get a glimpse of you through this conversation that I hope will be redemptive. And so be with us tonight, be with our sons, be with the fathers, be with Brian, be with Toya, be with April. And I pray at this time will be a blessing. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Pastor Alex, for that prayer. Um, I would like to share a little bit of the Save Our Sons mission. April and I were just two mamas who wanted to see our sons come home safely at night, as well as our husbands. And she called me and just was like, sis, we've got to do something about our youth being educated about police pullover etiquette via YouTube. They were learning lots of things that we as mamas knew were detrimental and could incite a very um, volatile situation during a traffic stop. And so we thought, what greater way to educate them than to have them hear from Black men with their own experiences in their own words. And so with the help of our mentor, Art Leslie, we hosted our first panel discussion at the Huntsville Inner City Learning Center back in 2014. And we were so richly blessed by the insight that the men that we invited offered. Um, Fast forward a little bit into the future when there was countless cases being documented of police brutality and police pullovers, stops just going awry. And we decided it was essential that not only would we gather with our sons and the men of integrity, but it was essential to have a diverse environment because this is something that was impacting all of us. And April and I live in a beautifully diverse world. And we would have people come to us whose hearts were heavy and they'd say, hey, my world is way too white and I want to do something about it. Or we'd have our Black friends say, hey, I've never had dinner with a white person. I've never had somebody who was outside of my race over to my home. And we thought, everybody's got to eat. So why not eat together? So we began to gather and share potluck dishes, poetry, and perspectives. And the reason being is that we feel like poetry has a way of bypassing the intellect and permeating the heart. And it's amazing how much you can convey in poetic form. So we have Mr. Proverbalist himself, who is going to share a rap with us tonight. Did you know that you were going to share this rap, sir? I hope you're ready. So we just appreciate being able to gather and share our hearts through the arts. And so we get to hear from Proverbalist.
All right. Can y'all hear me? Okay. Well, it's probably gonna read more like a poem, but it's all good. Here we go. To me, to be a father means many things. For one, living the manifestation of a dream, a birth that's worth the turbulence the world brings, and the work to stay serene in the midst of the extreme. Kings and queens I had to raise, I got a stake in how they emanate. I hope it's by faith that they walk and talk to demonstrate. Training in the way they should go with those that overcome and scripture in their heart remaining and not departed from. I know where I started from, a father who provided and still retained custody when my moms and pops divided. A child preoccupied with thoughts of being a grown up. But when my seed was conceived and born, I had to own up and put away them childish things. I had mouths to feed, had some advice, but I had to slice the chaff from the wheat. Nights with no sleep, I had to work to sacrifice some dreams and reach a resolve inside to provide by any means along as long as it was legal, because I saw too many people get caught up in the justice systems that has never been equal. Our children are a sequel to our life and our heritage, a real opportunity to raise and change the narrative. Our presence is imperative to provide and protect. That's why we're seen as a threat and often labeled as a suspect. I have to suppress certain feelings and move methodically just to survive in this game of chess when obviously they're trying to take the king off the board and make us tip them over, but no surrender, whether ignored or recorded for exposure. As a black father, some things I can't look over. That street bridge makes me a registered voter. If I'm a soldier, it's for the army of the Lord and not your team. Not everyone who speaks is dropping wisdom that we need to glean. A father is many things from a whole lot of perspectives, but I bet they all want their children to survive as a collective. That's it. Thank y'all.
Wow, thank you so much, Melvin. We greatly appreciate your labor of love and you sharing those profound poetic words with us tonight. Thank you so much. So guys, that's a little glimpse, even though we can't gather physically and share our culinary skills, we can still share our poetry skills. And so I just want to highlight that Save Our Sons is a place where we fight for one another rather than against each other. Our panel discussions have been dialogues and not debates. Our panelists always come with the intent to tune in and not just broadcast. We have seen exponential increase in the last week, and we are so thankful. Even though the face of Save Our Sons is constantly changing, one thing that always remains the same is that goal to see our husbands and sons come home safe at night and to stand in solidarity with those who wish to understand the plight of people of color in our country. So we believe that our position is to stand and our posture is to bow. If you think about Matthew chapter 10, verse 16, where we're called to be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves, a serpent is low to the ground and a dove has an aerial view. So as we move forward, we want to be very mindful to stay humble, but also be able to see the big picture at all times. So this is a safe place where we have hard conversations together so that we won't bow to racism when we're apart. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18 through 20 says, "Come on now, let's walk and talk. Let's work this out. Your wrongdoings are blood red, but they can turn as white as snow. Your sins are like crimson, but they can be made clean again like new wool. If you pay attention now and change your ways, you can eat good things from a healthy earth. But if you refuse to listen and stubbornly persist, then by violence and war, you will be the one devoured." So just as the quarantine has separated us, guys, so has segregation.
Yes.
This is a place where majority culture and minority culture can come together and grow in grace and in the knowledge of the Lord. So, as much as this platform has been for everybody, there's something that we feel like is extra special that needs to take place between us and our white brothers and sisters. We want to remain committed to not placing white feelings above Black lives, but we will remain committed to loving mercy, doing justly, and walking humbly with our God and with our white brothers and sisters who truly have eyes to see and ears to hear and hearts to change. So, thank you all so much for just hearing some of our heart concerning Save Our Sons. Now, we are so honored to get to hear some of the heart of our sons and our fathers that our group is so uniquely made up of. So thank you so much for listening to that reflection of what our mission is and how our mission is growing. We also are honored to be able to link arms with Ryan, which is an organization. The acronym for Ryan is Reaching Youth Across All Nationalities. And we will let our sister, Miss Kasha Edwards, explain her heart behind Ryan when she's able to join us in the near future. So, April, do you have a question for one of our sons?
Yes. Sons, what is the most useful advice that your father ever gave you? Cam, I
You
picked.
hear me? Oh, I was gonna go ahead. Um, it's an awesome question. I think there's so much advice that I was given. I think the biggest thing I would say now being married, um, that my dad taught me was success wasn't just about money or the right job, but really I think it was about family, being a great husband above anything else. More importantly, than any other title or any other hat that I have to wear. And I always keep that close to my heart. Every action, everything that I think about, like, okay, how will this affect my family? How will this affect my wife? And I think that's probably one of the biggest things I've taken from him, not only just from him telling me, but him also displaying it in our own home, growing up with my own mom. And I think it's been huge in my marriage in the past year. So that's probably the biggest thing that he's taught me up until this point.
Okay. Well, that's some good advice that he gave you. It's definitely going to help you in navigating through your marriage. I'm not a man, but I can tell you that your dad is one of the fellas that I can definitely say I look up to as a young father from my generation. How about you, Anthony Jr.? What would be your answer to that question? What is the best advice your father's ever given you?
Just to piggyback on that, like it's so many things. It's so hard to do just one thing. But the biggest thing is, you know, just keeping your name good. What it means to carry his name and what my name means, integrity, and always doing the right thing. When no one is looking, and just treat people how you want to be treated. And I think there are so many aspects of being successful and being rich in the world, but if you treat people how you want to be treated, and if you treat people with respect, and if you're just overall just a great guy, so many ways that can open up so many doors. And I watch my father, not only has he, that wasn't just his advice, but those are his actions. And that's what I'm able to see him. Those are the actions that I see him carry out on a day-to-day basis. So I would have to say just protecting my name, protecting his name, our name, and just always doing the right thing.
That is amazing advice. I can tell you guys, one day I was riding down Highway 53 and there was a gentleman whose work truck opened up and all of the contents of his work van fell out on the road. And I pulled over and I told my son, get out and help this guy. Well, when he got up to help this guy, there was another gentleman out there already helping him. And that gentleman was Anthony Jackson. You truly exemplify exactly what you teach your son, and you do have a great name in this community. And I'm just blessed to know you. Thank you for answering that question, Anthony Jr. Trayson, you're a young body in this group, but son, what would be your answer to that question?
My dad's biggest advice was when he told me the steps of when I get pulled over by the police.
That's the talk. And for some races, the talk is the birds and the bees. But for young Black boys, their talk is, son, this is what you do when they pull you over. And I don't know if I know that there are young men in this community who don't have fathers to give them the talk, who don't have anyone to tell them what to do when you get pulled over. But sons, you need to know that information. So if no one else will tell you what to do, I give you permission to contact myself, Toya Poplar, or any of the gentlemen in this group. We would love to tell you what we know to do when you get pulled over, because it's not if it happens, it's when it happens, and we need for you guys to be prepared. Toya, I'm gonna toss it over to you.
Thank you for that, April. Trayson, thank you so very much for sharing that. That was a big paradigm shifter for many in our group when they found out that the talk had a total different connotation in the African American community. And actually, Brian, I want to hear from you if you would be willing to share how you felt when you were first introduced to the talk.
Well,
Is Brian muted?
yeah, I was muted.
Okay.
Yeah, well, you were talking about when I was introduced to it at Save Our Sons.
Yes, sir.
Right. Yeah, it was different because I've had that talk with my son, but I never really thought about it. And I think I walked through the world kind of oblivious and didn't even realize, I was 14. I walked up to a police officer who was at McDonald's across from Carousel Skate Ring, and I had a marker in my hand flipping it around. And when I got up to his window, I was going to ask him for a ride. He turned around and he basically had his gun pointed at me and chewed me out for approaching him that way. So I've been in some situations. So I've had that talk with my son, but until I was in the room and heard the perspectives of and how much fear is there for your kids, send them out into the world just to go do normal everyday things with the fear of getting pulled over, and it made me realize the importance of the police pullover etiquette and getting that message out. I think that message needs to be shouted as loud as anything else, because that's the other side of it. Like even if you're dealing with a bad police officer, I feel like the best thing to do is de-escalate and come home safe, and document, because you're not going to win the battle on the side of the road. So the conversation became a lot more important to me after hearing other perspectives and hearing Melvin talk about when he goes to the bank. He dresses up because he's treated a certain way if he just, and I never can never even understand that. No matter how many conversations I've been in, no matter how long I've been in this group, I will never have that perspective because it's just not my reality. I walk through life. I'm a giant dude. Nobody messes with me. I just walk through life oblivious. And I don't know what you call that, but I think a lot of people are good-hearted, and they just don't know how to have these conversations. And I think the more we can do to bring everybody together to talk like this, that we can just understand everybody's perspective. I was saying, don't worry about how many friends you got. I've seen people post about how many or how long they've had a black friend or how many black friends they had, and that's crazy to me. But some people don't even know how to approach it, don't even know how to talk about it. And I just put out there the other day that if you just love your neighbor, no matter who they are, you love your neighbor, start up conversations, talk to people, just do the one word right there can change everything. If we'll love our neighbor, um, your friends list is going to be very diverse. Just because you got to be a great friend to have good friends. So your friends list is going to be diverse, and then you know, I think as this Black Lives Matter um, thing is in being screamed so loud, I think the come home safe thing, that message of police pullover etiquette has to go out there too, because that's the other side of it. If we can all focus on getting out of that situation because it's stressful for everybody, and you know, yeah, I think.
Brian, thank you so much for sharing. You highlighted a lot as you shared, and we greatly appreciate your voice. I knew that that would be something that was close to your heart because you have often expressed just the contrast and how you navigate through life differently than your Black
Yeah.
brothers and how you didn't know what you didn't know.
I had a friend the other day that said he's upset because his white friends are scared to talk to him. Like it's like they're not even hollering at him right now because they don't know what to say. You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I say something about that?
Yeah.
I think that if you are really my friend, then our conversation is not uncomfortable right now.
Right.
I think real situations like this expose fake friendships. And unfortunately, for some people, you might not have been a friend. And up until this point, you just didn't know. But for my white brothers and sisters saying, I got Black friends, my so and so married to a Black so and so, there are Black people at my house. Don't say that.
Yeah.
That's not the right thing to say. Because if that's the case, if that's the truth, then the world already knows it. If you are doing life with people from other races, you don't have to tell people about it. Like the gentleman that whose son spoke, and they talk about the lessons that they have taught them as fathers. As members of this community, if you live a diverse life, you don't have to explain that to people. People already know. However, if you don't, you feel the need to explain that right now. Don't explain it. Don't apologize for it. Just act differently moving forward. But do not hit us with that I got a white Black friend thing. That is not the move to make.
Pastor Alex posted something the other day about a lot of forgiveness because like me, a lot of people can never have that perspective. And like I had a conversation on our Facebook page one time. I offended someone by the way I said anything. I didn't even realize it would be offensive. Just my perspective was different. So I think I like on the other end of that what that post. If you can say anything about that, Pastor Alex, because you gotta we may everybody's heart's in the right place, and some people are just jumping on the bandwagon. But you got a lot of good people in the heart with their hearts in the right place, and they just don't know how to have the conversation. They may say some stuff that's going to upset you, but to continue to have these conversations, we can get to a place where we can all have potlucks together and understand each other's perspectives and all that. I don't know.
Pastor Alex, did you want to share what it is that Brian just referenced? I'm not familiar with the post that he's
I shared a lot of things, so I can't remember.
Yeah, it was something about your white friends saying Brian? Something. Your white saying stuff that are offensive right now, and having a heart to have grace and forgive them. I'm pretty sure it was several days ago though, but it just hit home with me because I've seen so many people posting stuff that's offended me, and I'm just like, they just don't have the perspective or know how to have the conversation, and they may say something that's going to offend, but to get through this and get to a better place, we need to be forgiven of that, because people don't I mean, their heart might be in the right place and they might say something silly like how many Black friends I have, but it doesn't mean they're bad people. They just don't have their perspective. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it takes empathy
Yeah.
to have this conversation. And when things are going on, and if you're in the majority culture, it's if you don't understand, it's just say I just don't understand,
Yeah.
and just can you empathize with what some of your black brothers and sisters are dealing with, and so you can't fix it. There's nothing you can say that can make it better, but you can just be there and just say, "Hey, I'm glad you told me I'm here."
I,
And I think just having empathy
yeah.
about what's going on and what some of your African American brothers and sisters may be experiencing can go a long way. And empathy is something that some people just have to learn. It's a
Yeah.
skill, it's an art to be able to empathize with other people without trying to find a silver lining or without throwing out statistics about what other things that are happening. But can you empathize with those you are in relationship with? And that can go a long way at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I absolutely agree, Pastor Alex. Um, Empathy is an invaluable language that we can all begin to speak simply by being slow to speak and quick to hear. One of the greatest forms of empathy is allowing someone else's voice to be heard over yours. So, Brian, thank you for sharing.
That's
And Pastor Alex, thank you for sharing that. I want to segue into our next question because I know that actually I want to ask this father, Anthony Jackson Sr., what is your dream for Anthony Jackson Jr.?
Uh, First and foremost, that his soul prospers and that he continues to be a man of integrity. And I think everything else will fall into place. So I think that, there's a lot of things, but I think that's like the main thing for me, that he continues to hide God's word in his heart. And I think that everything else will fall into place. So that's my dream for him. I just want him to have an abundant life.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that, Anthony. Um, there's a perspective that you began to share with me at the peaceful protest the other day. Would you care to share a little bit of that?
Yeah, I was explaining to Toya that I love this guy, and anybody who knows me, they know that. And what I was saying was, if you take my son because of a census act, what you're doing, what you're taking from me is you're taking my caretaker later on in life. He's my only son, So when you take the life of a male, a black person, period, but especially a male like that, he would be the end of the person who carries on my last name. And I think that's very important because when you think of it even in military, they won't, if you only have one son, they won't send him to the front line because they know the importance of having a son to carry your name. So I think for me, when that happens, you're killing off a generation. You're killing off my caretaker, someone who I invest in him. So hopefully when I'm older, I'm 100% sure that he's going to take care of me. But if you take that from me, then you've taken my caretaker.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Anthony. I think that the perspective that I saw was twofold. It was that if someone were to take the life of little Anthony, they would be taking the future. But if someone, little Anthony, were to take the life of your father, they'd be taking your past. And that's just detrimental on both sides. And so I thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to ask Elsie Smith, what is your dream for your son?
So many when as he was talking made me think about my son, my youngest son. We was watching this TV show, and it was a teenager who was following his dreams to be a dancer, and his parents, his dad basically disowned him, basically put him out the house. I think he was like 17 years old. And I kind of looked at my youngest son and I was like, dude, I love you too much to not support you to be your authentic self and follow your dreams. So for my kids, I've always believed in being sure that I don't dictate what life is going to be for you in a certain way. As the gentleman talked about character and integrity, of course, we teach all of those things, but I also want to be sure that when my kids wake up every morning, that they enjoying life. They're enjoying what they decide to do for a career. They're enjoying the things that they choose to do. Um, and that's important to me because I see a lot of people who go through life and they live vicariously through their own children, or they dictate that this is what you should do, or you should go to school to be a lawyer. You know, my kids, I have one of my sons he's here with me now. He's a creator, you know. Um, I didn't tell him that, son, you need to go to school to be a lawyer. The question is, what is it that you want to do with your life? And I did everything I could to expose him to that at a very young age, which as a very young man, he's flourishing and he's going to be really off the chain, you know, as time go on. But that's one thing that I really want. That's my dream for my children, you know, live authentic life. And outside of that, just be a man of your word. I believe in following through. You know, I tell my kids, if you say you're going to do something, keep your commitment. And if you cannot follow through for whatever reason, the least you can do is follow up.
That's good.
That's good.
That's good.
If I could add to that, one thing that what he did say is exposure. Something that my dad did teach us growing up is exposure. You know, it's more than just being a rapper or a basketball player or an athlete. We have so many more options in this world to be a lawyer, to be a creator, which is why I'm able to flourish in the area that I'm in because my dad allowed me to dip into those different areas and support me when I say I want to do this. He dives in on that. I think that's important for our community to not be so stuck in, like my dad said, and living through your kids, but allow them to find themselves. So I second that, and I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Xavier. I love that you and your brother have shared your father with many. Your father is a father to many. And through his nonprofit organization, Real Fathers Making a Difference, he has mentored countless young men. And LC, we just want to say how much we appreciate you being the change agent that you are in the city of Huntsville. And you will never know the ripple effect. You will never know how far reaching your impact and influence is in the lives of so many youth. So thank you so much for sharing. And Russell Sisk, I want to hear your dream for Joshua.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us to be a part of this. It's very exciting to have the opportunity to share. My biggest dream for Joshua is for him to continue in his relationship with Christ. I just think that building his relationship with Christ and continuing his relationship with Christ helps him to have better relationships in the community. The previous gentleman, I mean, the things that's been said is we can duplicate them a lot with what's being said, but the dream part of it is, you know, by him keeping his relationship with Christ and continuing to build that relationship with Christ, when he deals with other issues, he knows that he can fall back on Christ. I always call him the champ because in his endeavors and his schooling and things that he runs into a block, he runs into a problem, he runs into an issue, he falls short one of his classes, he's stumbling, you know, he knows he can fall back on Christ and that his worth is not in that class or his worth is not in what society tells him to be. So my dream is that he continues to just build that relationship and fall back on that relationship when the times come and he needs him, you know?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think this is such a significant question that I want to bounce around to all the dads and make sure that you all each have an opportunity to answer this. One of the signs my daughter held up at the protest was Black Dreams Matter. And I just thought that's really powerful. And I want to state that a life a life is representative of more than just a life. It is dreams, it's goals, it's aspirations, it's impact, it's inspiration. It's amazing how we just don't even think about in our everyday interactions how comprehensive life is. And so, Pastor Alex, I'd like to know, what is your dream for Trayson?
Wow. I mean, he's only 10, but I do have a lot of dreams for him. My son is my heir. And what I mean by that, the Shipman last name goes forward through him. And my dream is that the seeds that come from him would be a godly line of godly men who love their families, love their kids, love their wives. And that's my dream, that when that the curse, the generational curse of fatherlessness has ended with me having him as my son. And my prayer and dream going forward, that my grandsons will continue the tradition of godly men. And that's my dream, that coming forward, going forward, Shipman men will be known as godly men, godly fathers, godly husbands. And it starts with my son, who will be the third generation.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Pastor Alex. We got the coach, Mr. Kendrick Epps. We want to hear, what is your dream for Cameron? What is your dream for Kendall? What is your dream for Caden? What are your dreams for your sons?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share with everyone. Kind of like everybody else, Cameron taught me so much being the first born about how different all of them are. And I mean, first and foremost, it's always been about just displaying, not just having a love for the Lord, but displaying a love for the Lord in everything that they do. And then second, for me, it was most important because my biological father has been divorced 3, maybe 4 times. And so one of the biggest things for my sons was to see me love their mother, and still today, just unconditionally. We've made a vow. We've never had a heated argument in front of our children. We've been married almost 17 years. It's been some heated days, but we just always respected who they were and the way we wanted them to be raised. And so that was always number 2. I wanted to not be what my dad had, and I love him, but he just couldn't figure it out. That was the second thing. And then the third thing, kind of like everybody else, I just kind of have broken it down into so many little small things. But like I said, Cameron was first. When I got to college, my parents never taught me about, establishing great credit, balancing checkbooks. So I get to college, I start getting all these credit cards just to get the free t-shirts. And by the time I get into the real world, my credit's bad. So, that was one of the things I told Cameron early. I was transparent with him. I told him everything about how that situation had affected my life up until this point. So, I mean, one of our goals was to help him get to a 750 credit score as a college student, and we did that. And so, I mean, financially, I just always preach to them, be better than me. And not just be better than me, but I like to try to give them some guidance to know how, so they don't have to try to figure it out themselves. I'm not perfect. I love the Lord. I want them to know that, and I just try to be transparent with them with all areas of my life. They know the good I've done. They know most of the bad I've done, and at the right age, they'll know all of it. But my goal for them is just to be better than me. Love whoever they find as a wife, and love her unconditionally, and just display the Lord and all his characteristics in everything they do.
That's so good. Thank you so much, Ken, for sharing that. As a coach, you have impacted countless lives of children, and I just appreciate I believe that children, we all become what we behold. And so I'm so thankful for your example and influence in the lives of the children that you coach. I saved this one for last because I didn't want to get emotional. But I'd like to ask my husband, Melvin Poplar Jr., what is your dream for your sons? You're muted, by the way, babe.
Okay. Yeah. So my dream for my sons is that they will put the Lord first in everything that they do, and that their dreams will be fulfilled, and I have more grandbabies. I had grandbabies, but that's not immediate, but in the future. But I'm saying that their dreams will be fulfilled, and that they can um, echoing what a lot of fathers said. I mean, you want to see your children not only succeed, but also um, be fulfilled in their dreams. So that's been my for all of my children, my daughters too. And so I want them to just kind of glean some of the stuff that they've seen me do. Respect their mom. Not hit on their mom. What I'm saying, pay bills. Just kind of some of the standard stuff that being supposed to do that they seen their father do. I do want that, but that also that they would fulfill their dreams, and I've tried to the best of my ability to push whatever dream that is that they want to fulfill, and not try and impose my what I would do on them, and as they come of age. And right now, the younger ones, they still getting a lot of imposing because they're not old enough. But I'm still trying to push their dreams in terms of what they want to do. Okay.
I just want to, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. I just wanted to say that in on you talking about your goals as your son, I can attest to the notion that you have taught us in a large way by leading an example. And to answer the first question that I didn't get to speak on, but just in terms of like advice you've given me, this isn't explicit advice, but just through your example, I've learned the importance of a determined like work ethic and self-discipline. And in the past few years of my life specifically, I very much, I think, reaped the benefits of being able to take by your example and just put my nose to the grindstone and work hard. And I just want to say I'm appreciative of that fact.
Thank you for sharing that, Melvin. I greatly appreciate you. And if we have any other sons that didn't get an opportunity to answer that first question, we welcome you to do so. And if you need a refresher course, April asked the question, what is the most useful advice your father ever gave you? Joshua, did we get to hear from you?
No, I think one of the most useful advice, it kind of goes hand in hand with what he was saying before, is just that, yeah, you may fail and yeah, you may mess up, but that never defines you as a failure per se. I think that's just one of the biggest things, because there's many times that I've messed up and many times that I've fallen short. And so with that, I think, and there's times where I just feel like I couldn't get back up again. I think his advice for consistently loving, even though I may be very like stubborn and very in my ways of what I think is right and wrong, but I think being persistent and consistent in that way is one of the biggest things, because it reflects God's love. God's consistent in how he chases us down and how he loves us unconditionally. And I think that is a big thing. There's a big thing whenever, when that is shown, I guess, in reality, and in the sense of a dad and a son. So yeah, I think that is my answer for that question.
Thank you so much. I want to be mindful that every voice is heard. Little Anthony, did you get to share? You're muted, by the way.
Yes, I did. I got a chance.
You shared, and then Xavier, did you share? I think you gave some insight, but I don't think you got to share your response to that question.
And before you guys go, I apologize for that. The formula that we were supposed to follow was a couple of you guys answering But after hearing all of the fathers answer the question, I think it's important that all your voices are heard. I didn't want to ignore your voices, but that was just a formula that we were supposed to follow. I apologize. That's something my daddy taught me, to always apologize when you're wrong, and I was wrong for that.
We know your heart.
But the advice my dad gave me it's actually aligned to what his dream was just the exposure part of it, which I kind of already spoke on this, but I can briefly say that that I am grateful for the fact that I had a father to actually allow me to be myself in certain areas. So just the exposure aspect, like you said, for his dream for us is to actually be genuine in who we actually are. And so I just believe that the immediate, not the immediate, but I can't think of the word, but the fact that he allowed us to be ourselves through exposure and everything that he allowed us to do within ourselves is something that I believe that was very, 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 very useful in my life.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that. As a creative too, that kind of changes the game. Like, to have a father affirm you in your entrepreneurial efforts has to be something that maybe your peers haven't experienced. And so I just love that your father has given you fuel for your faith to pursue your dreams, because I know that can be very uncommon, as he did state that people tend to live vicariously through their children. So April,
yes,
you got a question, sister? This is my favorite question.
This question is for the dads. If your fatherhood was a brand, what would your slogan or hashtag be that represented your brand of fatherhood?
First come, first serve.
Yeah. You know what? I do think that's what we should do. First come, first serve. Yeah.
Well, obviously this is not original, but it be just do it. I encourage my kids to try everything. Never be afraid to fail. Never be intimidated by the word no, and just go and do it. I mean, pray about it first, but then go and do it. We learn by losing, and I think sometimes we try to protect our kids so much that we shield them from some things in life that may be put in place for them to be able to grow. And so, I mean, just do it. For me, I tell my kids, go after it. I mean, there's not much I'm afraid of, to be honest with you. And we know the Lord didn't put that spirit in us. And so I try to teach my kids the exact same thing. Who cares if you fail? One thing my mom used to always say, and I'll jump off and open up, but my mom used to always say, I don't care what you think about me. And, that instills so much confidence in me, just being around that's something that I try to transfer to my kids. Now, all of them are different. So there are certain areas with one of the three that we may have to focus on to help them, but all of them have their own boldness in their own way. So for me, it's just do it.
All right, bro, I got a question for you. When I asked for your hashtag earlier, what did you say?
I said be present. And the reason I say be present, because when my wife and I got married, one of the things, I didn't know how to be a father. I didn't know. I prayed for my wife. I knew she was who the Lord had for me. And my son and I always joked that he was the only thing that I forgot to mention in the prayer. And when he came when he came in the package, I had to become something I had never been. But one of the things that my wife said to me to this day, because I didn't know, I saw my friends that had kids in their 20s. Hey, their kids look nice, they dress nice, they had the newest sneakers. So, I thought that was one of the prerequisites. And early on, my wife just said, look, the goal is for you to be present and not just buy presents.
Wow.
And so, I mean, from that point on, a lot of things just shifted in my life. And I mean, whatever my kids have gone through, or I should say grown fluid. Right or wrong, I make it a point to try to teach a lesson from it, but just be present in their lives to let them know that, man, they're not alone.
That's good stuff.
Can I chime in for 2 seconds?
Absolutely.
I think that's huge. And I reflect sometimes just about either college or high school. I used to always have friends when I ran track in high school and college. They'd be like, man, your parents come to everything. I don't understand how they do it. But I've always taken that from them is we're going to make a way to make sure we're there to support our kids. And I guess in my world, I was like, man, I really didn't think about it. I started looking at my friends, and literally my parents were at every track meet pretty much in high school, traveling when I was in college. And it was like, man, your parents they really do love you, huh? And I'm like, is this not like normal? Is this not a thing that, a lot of parents do? But I think they just didn't make excuses and always found a way to be there to support me. And not even just present at sporting events, but if I call my dad at any time of night, he's going to pick up the phone and hey, what do you need? And, I think that was huge for me that I know going forward for my kids, I'm going to make sure that I'm there for them at any time, at any moment that they need me. So huge lesson, huge shout out to you. And we definitely are Just Do It sons for sure. And definitely taking that and then running with it. So I appreciate you and love you for that.
Hashtag let's do it. Hashtag be present. Melvin Poplar, what will be your hashtag or slogan?
My hashtag was sacrifice. As a father, I feel like you do have to sacrifice some things, and in the word it talks about when Jesus said, unless the seed go into the ground and die, it can't produce fruit. And a lot of times we got to die to certain things so that we can produce fruit. And that is like, you putting your family first, you put your marriage first and your family first. And a lot of times, it's like, well, I got to die to something I want to do or something because I know that, they need to see me and their mother as one, gotta die to, just, the way I save my money, just really just putting family first. And a lot of things you got to die to do that. And so I think it's about sacrifice. That makes any sense.
That's
that
really
was my
good.
hashtag.
That's really good. And a lot of times, I know dads have to die to certain lifestyles they were living in order for their seeds to grow and to be present. Because let's just face it, in order for your boys to be okay, you have to be at home with them a lot and present in their lives. So that's hashtag sacrifice, hashtag be present, and hashtag let's just do it. Bruh Jackson, what would be your hashtag or slogan?
Mine was devoted. Dedicated. All right. Dedicated. I messed up. Dedicated. I think I've always prided myself in being a good father. I come from my father was a good father. His father was a good father. So I think generations to me, like my father was a lot of things. He wasn't perfect, but he was always present. And even to this day, like he really taught me how to be a father. And what I did was I took that and intensified it to be a better father to him. So our history is a little different because I was really young when he was born, and my wife now is not his mother, so he was from a previous relationship, but I have custody of him when he was small. So I think with him, we really grew up together. So he's seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. So me being dedicated to him, for me, right now, I'm reaping the benefits of being dedicated because and I'm not just saying it because he's my son, but he is like the best son that I could have. We co-own a business. And for me, he is a blessing. And he goes above and beyond. He helps me, he helps my father. So I'm reaping the benefits of being dedicated. There's a benefit from it. So I just think now to me, there is nothing that he won't do for me. And we talk every day, we're best friends. I get the "I love you, Dad" every day. You know, so that to me, that's important to me. You know, as his father. So I know he loves me, and he knows I love him. So to me, I'm been very dedicated.
That's beautiful. You sowed seeds of dedication, and now you're reaping a harvest of dedication. It's so beautiful. I'm so proud of y'all. Man, I mean, to see a father and son duo and people act like it's so hard to work with family. I think it's hard to work with family that you hadn't already worked with.
Right.
You guys have worked together. You say you grew up together. You worked together his entire life. So for you guys to work together and be successful in your business, it just shows a beautiful picture of what you've done his entire life. I'm proud of you.
When he left and went to the Air Force, and my wife, I think those were probably the hardest days because we were always joined at the hip. And I remember when he left to go to basic training, I probably cried for 2 weeks straight.
Bet you didn't know that, Anthony Jr.
I didn't know that.
Okay, Brian Carpenter.
Trust me, I cried too.
You did. I bet y'all were separated. I feel like, but you made it through, and I'm proud of you. Thank you for your service. I had no idea you were retired from the Air Force.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. Brian Carpenter, what would be your hashtag?
Well, Toya and I were talking earlier about police pullover etiquette and coming home safe. So I made mine come home safe, which can be all that good advice we give our kids. And in this crazy world, the way it is right now, everybody's afraid of the kids coming home safe, no matter who you are. Like, so, you know, and that's all, like, I tell my son to always listen to that voice in your head. You know, the one that, not the one that tells you to do something stupid, but if you get that feeling that you're in a bad situation, you know, and it's our job as parents to, he'll be an adult in 3 years, is just when he gets there to be able to make good choices, come home safe, walk with integrity and character. And, I want him to be rich in relationships. I want him to know what true riches are. You know, I want to know that it's my job to make sure he makes good choices. I want him to be a good man, who's good to people, and he doesn't have to have a lot of stuff. But if he's rich in relationships, he's gonna be all right. So that's. But most importantly, I want him to come home safe. That's my biggest fear, and most parents' biggest fear is something that happened to our children. So, and my daughter too. You know, I same thing. I want her to be safe and make good choices and come home safe. So that's mine.
Your hashtag we could adopt that hashtag for Save Our Sons.
That's what I think. That's what we're talking about.
That's our mission wrapped up in one.
Yep.
Russell, sis.
Y'all, hey, real quick, April, can I jump in for a second? So when I asked Brian what was his hashtag, he said, I don't know. But Brian just yesterday hit me up and was like, sis, I made this graphic. Our hashtag for Save Our Sons should be come home safe. So when he said, I don't know today, I was like, bro, you just said the dopest hashtag ever. Right. So anyhow, thank you so much for sharing it.
And just simply love your neighbor too. We can make sure it's just like the kind of written like the Black Lives Matter, but love your neighbor or come home safe. And can I ask y'all a question? Do you feel like, I asked you this earlier, Toya, do you feel like Black Lives Matter is so much bigger than that organization now? It's a thing. It's a movement. It's not that, because maybe some people don't want to be involved with that organization, but everybody is just involved with this movement. They're not involved with that organization. You know, I think Black Lives Matter is so much bigger than that organization.
I would 100% agree with that. It's a lot larger than that organization, and you don't want to be pigeonholed by someone trying to go, do you stand for these specific things? But no, it's a lot bigger than those specific things or specific people. It is a much larger movement.
under the Black Lives umbrella, there are so many different hashtags that need our attention right now. I think we need to just focus on no justice, no peace. Because if there's not going to be justice in these cases where there are arrests and acquittals and no time served, we will never have peace. It'll stay, there will always be unrest in the country until justice is served. So I agree. I agree with what Melvin said. I do. All right, hashtaggers. We have heard from Epps. We've heard from Jackson, Epps, Poplar. We haven't heard from Sisk. Mr. Russell, what will your hashtag be for your brand of fatherhood?
So my hashtag is hashtag 110. That's 110. And it has a dual meaning to it. The first one is from Colossians 1:10, where it talks about let everything we do reflect in Christ. So, I really encourage my children, like the other people have said, that to walk in integrity, to let your light shine, to walk with that confidence, and it goes back to the relationship. But just if we fall so much in society that we try to blend in with society, but if we continue to let God's light shine through us and let what He has for us, and that's one of the things that I tell my children, thank you for letting God use you. Thank you for being open to let God use you. It's an important important thing that we share, because sometimes we kind of overlook that. Sometimes we feel like that we give, and it actually leads to the second part. The second part, we give 100, we give 100%, and we're going 100 miles an hour to try to achieve our goals. And sometimes we feel like it's not, the things that we're doing are not people are not grateful, or that we're not reaping the rewards that we feel like we should. But if we fall back on God and we continue and we give that extra 10, then we realize that what we're doing is for Christ and that the reward is in Christ. So that would be my hashtag 110.
110. I like that. You have provoked my mind to look further into Colossians 1:10. I can tell you that your children are definitely a blessing to my life. I don't know all of them, but Miss Lauren gives adults a reason to go and study God's word. You guys have put so much scripture in her. You and Miss Evelyn have did a great job with these kids. And I take my hat off to you, Russell. You are one of the people when we moved downtown to the Cooper house, these two moms with this sometimes funny money, our budget wasn't looking like much. And I think when we moved downtown to the Cooper house with Save Our Sons, I think I can attest, can speak for Toya, when we felt like we were a little bit over our head. And every time we walked into the Cooper house and we saw your face, we knew we were just where God wanted us to be. You always made that place feel like home. And it's because of you that Cooper house will always be our other house that we call home. So thank you, Russell.
Oh, you're so welcome. And it's been such a pleasure to join the group and to be a part of the group. And and I think it relates to me. I mean, we've been having this discussion about Black Lives Matter, and at first, several of my friends were, it's more pro-Black, and I felt like that I can admit now that my first response was that all lives matter. But in reality, when you start digging deep into it and you get away from what other people are thinking or doing, and we think about Christ and we think about our relationship, and if we call everyone our brothers and sisters, well then now, we're not singling out the Black lives, but we need to think about this is our family. Our family is needing some help from us. So we need to go and help our family, and we need to get this part of our family as strong as the other part of our family. The father spoke earlier, Mr. Jackson spoke about his son, and if something happens, his family. So now he's a part of my family. So now I'm in there with him and I'm fighting, and I'm not looking at color, but I'm just looking at my family. And if my family needs help, I'm there for my family. And that's what it's all about with all of these fathers. And that's what it's about with Save Our Sons. We're looking at it from a family perspective. I regret that black comes into play, because if the funniest thing is when I'm officiating on the football field and I hear these people saying, "Oh, you're prejudiced. You're against you don't want the," and I'm like, "Do you want to see a picture of my kids? I can show you a picture of all 5 of my kids." So and I have it on the cover of my phone so I can share it with them. So and that's the big thing. I just think it's important that part of our family is hurting right now, and it's not about going out and I share with some of my other friends, it's not about going out and retaliate against what's going on. Let's figure out ways to make it better in the long run with everybody. And one of my other friends, and y'all know Shonda's husband, Daryl, he and I were talking the other day, and it's about what are we doing in the community right now? What are we doing to strengthen things in the community? And right now I'm working with Walter Jones from the Seattle Seahawks. He's a Pro Football Hall of Famer. He's the top 100, and he has a brand called Best to Ever Do It. And the brand for that is for you to go out and be the best person you can be today. And that's what we try to encourage everybody. So even the police officers, even us as if we're driving on the street, we got to be our best. We got to be our best on the job. We got to be our best in life. And there's only one that was able to do it perfectly. And that's what we need to try to be our best and follow Christ.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that I have gotten most of you guys hashtags, but last but not least, LC, what would be your hashtag for your family, for your brand of fatherhood, or slogan? Nobody's did a slogan. Everybody's on a hashtag.
Well, mine's a hashtag, so it's actually my own hashtag. I have a shirt line. It's hashtag Team Real Fathers. But can I say, man, I'm really full right now. It's not often that you hear this type of dialogue between fathers and their sons. So really shout out to all the dads that's here and the sons being transparent, being open. People need to see this. People need to know that it's okay to have these conversations and to compliment one another and encourage one another, even as fathers and sons, and fathers doing the same for each other. So I just had to put that out there. Mine is hashtag Team Real Fathers. Man, how long do I have? I'm gonna make it as short as I can.
You have your way, sir. We yield the floor to you. Have your
way, yeah.
So most of you know I run a youth program, and one of the hardest sessions that I have, and hopefully I don't shed a tear through this, is we have a session where we bring in Tony Hawk sometime. If you guys are familiar with him, he used to work at Advocacy Center. And the guys would actually write a letter to their dads that they do not know or have relationships with. And I tell you, when I have those sessions, it's not a dry eye in the house. I don't care how hard they are, who around. By the time we get through that session, every last one of those boys have tears running down their eyes. They have an option to mail the letter to me, to actually send it to their dad. We have a kind of a release burning ceremony. Hashtag Team Real Father. I'm an advocate for fatherhood. I teach my sons every decision that you make, it can have an effect on your children. If you're not living your life in a certain way, you have kids too early, you're not prepared. You may be setting yourself up to be a deadbeat dad, or you may be setting yourself up to have a fatherless child. So through Team Real Fathers, if I can't close the gap of the men in my generation to get back involved with their kids, hashtag Team Real Fathers will work with all these young men that we're touching, even watching this right here. We can close the gap in that matter. So to teach these young people who are in our lives, nephews, little cousins, brothers, our kids, and the community who we coaching through basketball, football, through the arts, anybody we're touching. When it comes to these young men, we need to express and let them know that the decision that you make matters, you know, and fatherhood will probably be upon you one day. So what is it that you're going to do to make sure that you can join that team, Real Fathers? And when we say Real Fathers, we all know what that means. You know, we're able to be there, you know, be engaged, be a part of their lives, be able to provide. You know, all those things matter. So there's certain things that need to happen before we even get to that point. So those are the things that we try to instill. So hopefully through that effort, we'll close that gap of fatherless kids as we continue to move forward.
That's so good. I'm so proud of you and your organization. LC, can you tell our viewers how they can get involved with Our Father's Mad? How can they, if there's a young boy that's tuning in, how can they become a member of your organization?
Yes, we actually in the process now of enrolling youth this summer, which we do every summer. But all they have to do is either go to our website, which is the letter R, fathersmad.org, and the information is there, or they can call our office, which is 256-316-1991. If somebody want to be a volunteer, we even have opportunity for ladies to volunteer as well. All they have to do is contact us that way. They can email info@fathersmad.org. And we have the electronic form that we send out, and you can, it's like about 20 different ways that you can volunteer for the organization.
And April, Brian has the graphic of LC's hashtag, as well as we included his website, ourfathersmad.org, on the graphic. So thank you, bro. We appreciate you more than words can ever express. Oh my goodness, this is so good. And you got through it without crying, so.
I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, LC, can you tell us a little bit? We have a fallen officer in our community that I know was very instrumental in coming out and touching the lives of your boys. And can you just share a little bit about that? We are blessed. I think our community is very unique in that we have Officer Tory Green, who comes and supports Save Our Sons and enlightens us. And he and little Anthony actually are siblings. And so that's amazing that we have been able to see the often adversarial relationship between officers and youth, that gap bridged simply through communication. And I'm thankful that Officer Tory, when he comes out, he humanizes the officer's plight. If he shares how he's had an experience where he almost had to pull his trigger and how that affects him, how it affects his sleep for the next 2 weeks, you are able to see that not everybody's some vigilante that's in the Wild Wild West. This is a person who wants to get home safely at night as well. And so LC, I'd like for you to just take a moment out to honor the officer who would come and speak into the lives of your kids.
Officer Clardy, we reached out to Huntsville Police Department probably back in like 2011, maybe 2010. And Officer Warren said that we was probably the first organization to actually reach out to them. One of the first to reach out to them to invite them to come and have this talk that nobody was talking about as often at the time. But what the goal behind that, building that relationship with Huntsville Police Department and our young men, was to not only allow them to learn the things that they need to know as far as first of all, we wanted to know what the protocol was for Huntsville Police Department. What is the protocol? Is it normal if you get stopped that 2 police cars pull up? If our young people know that, they may not get hysterical and get upset because 2 police cars are pulling up. So another thing was if they approach by foot. A lot of my young men don't drive, so they may get approached by foot, walking from the store or in the park and stuff like that. So what's the protocol? So Officer Rice, who is Lieutenant Rice or Captain Rice now, Officer Warren and Clardy would come and visit us at least twice a year. And we would have, we built really good relationship with them. It's been times that some of my guys may have been in trouble or in an incident. I would get a call from Clardy or Warren or somebody. They would contact me and let us know what was going on and how we could intervene and things like that. So we had built a really good relationship. We would have this thing that's called Cops Ask Guys. So the guys ask cops. So, and I always talk about it. She didn't air when I did the news story, but I think Clardy was a little fired up at one of those sessions because the boys were saying stuff like, well, why is it that white cops don't like black kids? You know, so Clardy that's not true. You know, he tried to contain himself, you know, but they actually really got to know our guys and our guys knew who they were. So they would come back and say, you know, we saw this officer, Officer Clardy, Officer Warren, or Rice. But it was important for us to bring them in, you know. I want to be honest, it wasn't necessarily to build necessarily the relationship, but that's what ended up happening. It was more so to be sure our kids was informed.
Yeah, I'm thankful for Captain Rice and his support. There have been times where we've called and requested an officer, and he makes that a priority to make sure that he doesn't just send one, but he sends two. Even if they're on duty, they come over, and it's amazing because we get to see how very present they are, but how hyper vigilant they have to be. And Will Anthony, I just want to ask you to share, being that you're a brother, I know we all have loved ones, but I just want to hear if you have anything you'd like to share, because we've had tremendous support from State Trooper Somerville, your brother Tori. Like, I feel like they are a part of our origin story as much as April and myself. So is there anything you'd like to share, Anthony, about your brother?
You know, all officers are not bad guys, you know. And I've watched my brother, you know, a lot of times the portrayal would be that there would be bad things, but of course those people had done bad things, so he had to, you know, more so react versus being proactive in a negative way, just trying to jam people up. So I've actually saw another side of his heart. I've actually been on ride-alongs with a lot of Huntsville police officers and, you know, joint task forces here in Huntsville, and you know, it's a horrible perception. You know, they're not all bad guys. Like, I've seen the softer side of the majority of those officers. I've seen ones that, you know, they hate to pull you over. They hate to get into those predicaments. They hate to get into those situations. So, you know, I've learned that just as much as we hate being stopped, a lot of times they hate pulling us over. You know, I've seen them try and take stuff off the computer just so it wouldn't show up in the database. But all in all, I've seen a different side of my brother's heart as well as the other officers. So do we have some bad cops? Absolutely. But I don't think that they're all bad. I think there are some cops out there that actually do value human life, not just black lives or white lives, but I think they value, you know, overall human life. So.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that in the climate that we live in that can be so polarizing, and the media perpetuating this narrative of extreme divisiveness, I know that there's a lot of unrest, and there's a lot of inequality, and there's a lot of injustice that takes place. But I also know that as much as I pray for victims, I also pray for our officers. And when we were at the peaceful protest, there was a little bit of a scare with like a smoke thing, and everybody got startled. And my kids, I told them our rallying point, if something happens, I want you to go to my office, which is in East Side Square. So my kids were like 2 blocks away from me. And Amaya came back for me and she said, Mama, I kept saying, where is Mama? I said, girl, I was snuggled up next to this police officer. I was like, I took 3 steps over and we stood shoulder to shoulder, and we were behind the car, and I had perfect peace. And so anyhow, I just wanted to say that our children need to see examples of solidarity amongst race, but also amongst our law enforcement. So Anthony, I thank you for sharing that. April, was that all of your hashtags?
That was all of my hashtags, but I cannot move. That was all of my hashtags, but I can't move forward without shouting out Judge Sybil Cleveland, who's a judge downtown, and she's welcomed me and a group of inner city kids to into her courtroom every summer since 2012, and she's answered every question that I've ever wanted her to answer. Gotten police officers in for us to ask questions. She came out of that judge's robe and became a real person and allowed those kids to hear her testimony and just tell us a lot of things that we didn't know. So shout out to Judge Cleveland too.
Thank you for that, April. We have been tremendously blessed to be able to have powerful partnerships with people in our community. This question is to the sons, and this is a hard question. Guys, when you hear the name Ahmaud Arbery, when you hear Trayvon Martin or Alton Sterling or George Floyd, when you hear Botham Jean or Philando Castile or Eric Garner and Huntsville's own Dana Fletcher, what do you think? What comes to mind when you hear those names?
You go ahead.
Oh, okay. For me, when I hear those names, you immediately put yourself in those shoes. For the younger gentlemen that lost their lives, you put yourself in those shoes, and it's like that could have been me. That could have been my life. I could have been the one running. I could have been the one holding skills. I could have been in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that could have been me. And seeing it from the older people's, or the older gentlemen that were killed, is like, that could be my dad. That could be a role model in my life. So seeing those things, you get a lot of emotions. You get fueled, and you get a lot of hatred. I think it's important for us to turn that hatred and that energy into something that can be done effective in the community. I think that we need that same energy to try to make a difference, to continue to protest, continue to vote, continue to donate to these causes, continue to sign these petitions, because we have a responsibility. If we put ourselves in those shoes and in those perspectives, we have a responsibility to make sure that
Thank you, Xavier.
And to put that we love. So it's a hard conversation to have, and that's a very great question for you to put yourself in those shoes of the people who have lost their lives. And it's really easy to do so because we look just like those people that were killed. So I think that we need to use that energy and those perspectives that we have to actually continue to make a difference. And not just support the Black Lives Matter movement because it seems like it's on Instagram, but because this is actually something that needs to be heard, and we actually need to do something about it. So,
Xavier, thank you for that. Thank you. I want to ask you a question as a creative, because I had a brief conversation with my girls the other day. We saw mom and daughter walking around the courthouse yelling, "No justice, no peace." And we nodded and we put our fist up and we smiled to let them know that they had our support. But I'm a super soft-spoken chick, and I looked at my girls and I said, if I go over there and I yell, I'm probably going to lose my voice. But if I go home and I protest with my pen, my grandchildren will read my words someday. And Xavier, I want to ask you, as a creative, how have you channeled your energy?
Through photography and through personally, I use my Instagram as a platform. I'm able to design certain things and actually put out my feelings towards the causes and everything. But I believe also capturing the moment through photography and actually having that footage of something actually happening in this time that looks just like something happened in 1967. So having that footage actually having that to actually spread out to different type of people. And I have friends that that are in the music industry. You know, some people aren't really comfortable with protesting, but they're very comfortable with speaking their words through their art. So some people is either music or painting or something. So being a creative, you know, we have a voice without even saying a word.
That's
It
powerful.
even goes as far as putting something on a T-shirt and
Yeah.
being creative in those ways where you can actually voice your opinion and make a difference without saying a word. You can do it.
That's good. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's important that we empower every joint to supply what they are called to supply. And so thank you for sharing that, Xavier. I look forward to cyber stalking you and following your content on Instagram. Cameron Rice, what do you think of when you say these names? And I think it's important to say these names. Ahmaud Arbery, Alton Sterling, and y'all, what's sad is this white paper can't even house the amount of Black names that have been tragically, senselessly, recklessly lost. And so I'm going to try my best to say their names because their names matter. And there's one name that I just want to confess that I feel guilty for not saying more often. But y'all, when the tragedy happened locally with Dana Fletcher, we didn't say much. And my heart breaks for his wife and for his daughter and for his friends and for his peers. And I just want to say that as much as it's so extremely tragic that we lost George Floyd in the way that we did, the awakening that has occurred is so significant. So it's been a time of great grief. And yet it's been a time of just the appreciation that conversations that should have been had a long time ago are now currently being had. And so when you hear these names, Cam, what do you think?
I think specifically, Ahmad probably hit me very, very, very close to home. And the reason why, I didn't really think about it, but we just recently moved here to Troy, and I usually go on a run in my neighborhood. And honestly, it's probably 85% white, 15% Black in our neighborhood. And just to watch that video, it really made me think about like, man, this could have been me any day of the week. And I usually go, it doesn't matter the time of day. I mean, I still usually go when the sun's up. And I think the biggest thing that really hit me was about I have to really strategically think about what I wear, you know, where I stop in the road. And it's unfortunate that I have to. But I think in those situations, Ahmad's hit really, really hard for me. All of them are very tragic and, you know, didn't get the justice I don't believe that should have been served. But I think Xavier hit on a really good point of just the time of this is really our time to share our voice, be about action. And I think the biggest thing that I've done, just being in the position I am in the city, is really going through Troy and finding out like what policies are in place. Like, are we, because this could happen in any of our cities. Like, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it may happen in Minneapolis and it happened in Georgia. Actually going to talk to our police chief and ask, hey, so what happens if a guy gets pulled over? Like, what are the procedures and policies to make sure that this doesn't happen to somebody like me or somebody who looks like me? And so I think it's really kind of propelled me personally through the George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, just really reflecting on those situations to really like, okay, we're at a time where change is really could be on the other side of this if we go about it the right way. I think the protests are great. But I think, man, I think action, finding out what those practical steps are so this doesn't keep happening over and over again. And I see a lot of states are changing some of their policies. So I think we're moving in the right direction. But I think it's up to us to share, have those conversations with people who don't look like us and make them understand like this is what an everyday life looks like as a black man. You know, people lock their doors when I walk by their cars. It's unfortunate. I could be wearing a three-piece suit, but they're just uncomfortable. And people who don't look like us need to understand, like, this is what our lives look like. Didn't mean to go on a rant about that, but I mean, it's
Oh,
just
that's good.
really things that people need to understand is like, this is what it looks like. Women clutching their purses when they see us on the same side of the sidewalk. I mean, and I don't have anything on my record, don't look threatening. I mean, you can see how thick my glasses are. I mean, I just look like a geek walking down. So, I mean, but that doesn't really matter. It's just I'm black and they don't understand. They just have these preconceived notions of like, oh, I may be in danger, but just having those conversations with people to let them understand, like, this is what I have to deal with, I think really could help propel us into another thing. And then also dealing with our elected officials to make sure that the right things are in place to protect people of color, minorities in America.
Thank you, Cameron.
Do you guys
You
think that
touched on so much goodness.
do
I'm
you,
sorry, Brian,
my
what's
bad.
up?
Do y'all think the news is really causing that fear to be uh, amplified a lot more? And people, just because all we're seeing on the news is the small percentage of people that are doing bad things and the bad stuff that happened here the other night. But like the video, and you were talking about the photography looking like the '60s. I've seen in all these photographs that are coming out of those protests, how awesome that day was, and how beautiful this city is. Huntsville is like one of the most diverse cities. Man, we're usually, I mean, everybody's got a long way to go, but Huntsville's pretty good. We're diverse. I mean, we're good to each other for the most part. It's unlike a lot of other places in Alabama, a lot of other places in the world, which is probably why it's the top city to live in the United States, right? But I just feel like that bad element and just seeing it on the news all the time just makes it so much worse. And to get a positive message out and the message of the protest without the riots, is just really important.
Well, Brian, I believe that your perception is your reality, and not to be dismissive of your perception. However, just thinking about what Cameron just stated, um, I want to validate what he just stated. Me, myself, as a Black female whose name is outside of a building in Huntsville, Alabama, I was afraid to put my key in my office door and take my children inside after the protest because I had a fear that police officers would think that I was looting and that I was breaking into a building.
Wow.
And so I know that just as a beautiful Black woman, there's a privilege that I have. I get completely different customer service than my husband or my son. I will never forget, we were on vacation and my son was walking through a hotel parking lot, my oldest son, Melvin, and there were two white women who kind of repositioned themselves as he walked past, and he softened his countenance to look very innocent and docile. And I said, whoa, Melvin, did you see that? I was talking to my husband. Did you see that? That was little Melvin's non-threatening Black man face. Did you teach him that? And he said, babe, I don't have to teach him that. You have enough people lock their car doors when you walk by, and enough people clutch their purses, and you learn that. You learn that if you don't want to be perceived as a threat. And so as much as I am grateful for the dynamic of the glimpses of solidarity that I see, I would be remiss to not see the need for so much progress that is needed in our city and in our state. And we can live in a bubble and have this illusion of solidarity. But I've found in the last week, Brian, that a lot of my friends that I would show up for to kind of check a box like, hey, diversity, they have been on their way to a diversity dinner since 2014 when we started it.
Right.
6 years.
And so we can't check a box and say, well, I know Toya and April, and they started this thing, and feel like we are living together as one. there has to be a reciprocity. And even as Russell spoke earlier and he said, you know, our family needs help, I would dare to go further and say our family is hurting, and I hurt because my family is hurting.
Yeah.
Because if one part of the body hurts, then the rest of the body should feel it. However, I believe that supremacy is so pervasive that oftentimes, in order for a white person to even justify them entering into a Black world, they have to perceive themselves as helping that person. And I want to challenge our listeners to understand that if we are one and there's equity in our relationship, then empathy alone should cause your heart to break about whatever's breaking your brother or sister's heart. You should not have to be written into the story as the savior or as the helper in order for your heart to be tender and compassionate towards your brother or sister. And
Yeah.
so I just want to be mindful that although we have affirmation in our group, that we also have the accountability that we need, because the two of them can coexist, and they must coexist if we're going to see actual change.
Right.
And not just the checking of the box like, hey, look at us gathering together, we look diverse. We really have to go deeper and dismantle a lot of the systems that are in place. And so I don't know if you guys have seen the analogy of um, leaving the 99 and going after the one. People are using this analogy to say that Black Lives Matter is likened unto Jesus leaving the 99 and going after the one. I find that dangerous because that paints a white person who has embraced Black Lives Matter in the position of a savior that is leaving the 99 and going after the Black sheep in the family of faith. And I don't think we should have to be perceived as sinners to where white people have to come save us in order for us to live in solidarity.
Right.
So it is vitally important that we rightly divide scripture, and we look at scripture from a place of, much like the children of Israel when they were in the wilderness and they were being bit by snakes and they were dying. God told Moses to build a bronze serpent and have them look upon it, and they would be healed. So until America is ready to look upon the serpent of racism that has been biting us and making us sick for so long, we will not be healed. It is so important for us to do our own anti-racism work and stop manufacturing these kumbaya moments that make us feel like we are one, when in reality, some people are benefiting from the systems that we live under while others are being oppressed. And just because we've learned to smile and be compliant does not mean that we're pleased, nor does it mean that we feel like there is equity in our relationships. So I know that was a major tangent, but I just wanted to state that because this is the world that we live in, but this is not indicative of what a typical citizen doesn't even feel like a citizen, because a citizen is entitled to rights. And we have not been privy to those rights. So I'm sorry. Next, son, I'd like to ask, um, let me see. I would
Before
like
you
to
go any
ask.
further,
Melvin, I think
Okay.
Melvin has something to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, a while ago. So, Xavier said it better than I was going to. Basically, those names you mentioned, especially George Floyd, it speaks to, it's a cautionary tale for me. It's a lot of things, but first and foremost, it's a cautionary tale, and it it made me really upset when I saw the um, when I saw the abuse on George Floyd. It's rare that I get so heated about like a news story, but this one really it it infuriated me on the inside, and it's even more disgusting to think about how we live in the technology age where everyone has a camera on them, and to think about how systemically this has been happening for so long, and it's and we're only now like seeing a lot of stuff. Just imagine what you don't see recorded. And it's just important to speak to Brian's hashtag of, I think it was come home safe. I think it's very important to riot. Not to riot. I think it's important to what?
To protest?
Yes, to protest. That's what I meant. It's important to speak up and to speak out against it, but it is important to be safe and be thoughtful and mindful of the danger that you're in and that you can be in at any moment. So I think that's what comes to mind for me a lot of the time.
Joshua.
I think for me, it's just it's very eye-opening. I think for so long it was the idea of they say if the lighter your skin, well, the more less threatening you look. And with me having lighter skin, it being a whole thing. But there's been multiple times where I've experienced racism at my college that I just recently left. It's a Christian college, and you think, well, no, there's no way racism will be there. But yeah, it is. And there's multiple times where that's come towards me, and I've been put in that situation in front of lots of people, and I've had to answer out of love and not retaliate out of hate. And so looking at all these things and hearing these names, initially, I can't sit here and lie and say that I didn't get. It doesn't make me angry and bring up all that anger from the past of all the hurt that I've been through in different racial issues. But it makes me aware. It makes me very much so aware of what's going on and what's happening around us. Like everybody else has been saying, it's one of those things you have to step up and you have to make a difference. You have to voice the truth. All that lines up with the word of God, as well as just standing up for what is right. And it wasn't until things started getting worse and you hear story after story that my mom starts giving me this talk. And I'm like, I've never had to have really this talk. It's been being biracial. It's this sense of where you never really belong to one group. Either you're seen as black and you act white, or you're seen as one and the other. And it's like what do you mean act white, act black? What, like, this is your black side, or this your white side? And it's like, no, like that. It's just the whole stigma that comes behind it. But I think with everything going on, it just makes it a whole lot real and a whole lot more serious. And you just have to stand up for what is right and to state behind it. And so I think for me, it makes my heart very sad. I'm a very empathetic person, so that it put myself in that shoes and imagine how my mom would react. Imagine how the hurt that she would go through. We were sitting here looking at the Ahmaud story, and before I had gotten off social media right before it all happened, and so I was very ignorant to it. I saw the video and I didn't understand the story behind it, and it was such a graphic video, and seeing that and getting on there and I don't know, that's somebody's life, that's somebody's whole story. We all have a story that God's written for us, and to have somebody's end early, it's sad. And it's this tug in my heart that makes me want to stand up for all my brothers and sisters who are struggling, to stand up and to speak up. As some of you may know, like my major was worship ministry, and to come out of that and to be a worship leader. A worship leader is not just something on a platform. My platform is right here, right now. My platform is to say, hey, these Black lives do matter. They do. Each person that I know has an impact, black, white, yellow, whatever. But right now, with this situation with Black lives, and having experienced some of these things, it's so sad, and it's just the time to be aware and to speak up. And so, I won't keep ranting, but yeah, that's my take on it.
Thank you, Joshua. Can you share with us what have been some of your methods of channeling? Like, what does your protest look like?
I think for me, it's just, so I have a good bit of white friends, and just educating them. And a lot of my white friends have been very much so like, hey, I've gotten so many texts actually from people who are like, hey, Joshua, I'm sorry for the time that I said this, or I did this, or I was this way towards you. And I'm like, I didn't even remember that, but they did. And I think this whole thing is not just making us as Black people aware, but it's making my white friends and white brothers and sisters aware as well. Just so many apologies, and I think go say your question one more time. I'm sorry.
Oh, just how do you channel your energy? Like, what is your, for example, when I said I protest with my pen, Amaya said, Mama, I can protest through film. And Trinity said, I can protest through drawing. And I just thought that's amazing, because when pressure is applied, our true nature is revealed. So what does that look like for you?
Oh yeah, I for sure being somebody who's generally quiet, speaking up more, and like I said before, just talking to a lot of my friends who are white who have questions, and even the ones who have an opinion that opposes mine. To deal with them, I love that saying, hey, no, this is what you're ignorant to, my friend, and this is the truth of the matter. Also, one of my biggest things I do besides graphic design, and so I've been doing a lot of graphics that have to do with the beauty of Black, the beauty of color. And so some of you may know my sister, like taking pictures of her and having symbolic messages that go behind it, or my older sisters and stuff like that, who are African American. And so just with that, it's really been a sense of the arts for me, but also a sense of, hey Josh, you're usually quiet, but I need you to speak up. And it's that sense of just wanting to talk and say, hey, let me help you with this. And not necessarily arguing, because personally, I just don't have I do not have the energy for an argument. But I will gladly help and educate somebody who doesn't understand what it feels like to be someone of color. And it's been a lot of that lately, and a lot of phone calls I've gotten from some of my white friends who have just been like, hey, I don't understand this, and I didn't take you serious when you said this, about a year ago, but I'm remembering you now because I remember the talks that you've given me in your story of where you come from. And so I think, as cheesy as that may sound, like just my voice has come out of this. So yeah.
That doesn't sound cheesy at all, Joshua. That's the reason that we're here, is because your voice matters and we care about your voice. So I just want you to know that every bit of the work that we've done with Save Our Sons, it's been, you prepare for times of war during times of peace. And because we've been having difficult conversations along our journey, when this happened, it's only natural that we have conversations, but I too find myself having to use my voice more, because I believe that it's been easy to have the illusion of connectedness, when in reality, you can suffer all these microaggressions from insensitive things that people say. And so for you to be speaking up is powerful. And sometimes it takes the breakdown that precedes the breakthrough. So thank you for sharing. Guys, we're getting a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but if everybody can mute if you're not speaking, I think that would help that feedback go away. Okay, who else do we get to hear from? Xavier, did you share? Yes, let's see. Okay. We want to hear from all the sons. Have we heard from everyone? Yes or
we
no?
haven't heard from Trey's son. We haven't heard from
Grayson done tapped out. So
Is it past his bedtime? Is that everyone's voice? Let's see. I have to scroll back and forth between screens. Did we hear from you, little Anthony?
No, but like Cameron was saying, with the mod, I that hit home for me because I run every morning before I go to work. And I think one of the things, it just kind of lit a fire under me. It talks about to whom much is given, much is required. And my dad has always taught me to be vigilant, be vigilant of my surroundings, to, pick and choose my battles, to be aware. And, pretty much he who angers you controls you. And so that just lit a fire under me to go more in depth with not just my generation, but some that have either come before me or ones that'll come after me. Just the importance of choosing your battles, picking and choosing your battles. You're not weak if you walk away. You're not weak just providing law enforcement with what they need. Everything doesn't have to be a rebuttal. The key is just to make it home. When you go out for that jog, the key is just to make it home, and not just carrying on my father's name, but I'm a husband now. So I have to think about my wife. I have to get home to her. So, you know, part of being a man is just being able to walk away and you know, pick and choose your battle. So that really hit home for me.
Thank you for sharing that. That's powerful. Even the concept that you, or the fact that you stated you're a husband now. When we heard George Floyd call out for his mom, we get to see how family matters, and getting home safely to your wife matters, and your father being able to have grandchildren someday matters, and those grandchildren coming through your bloodline matters. And so I just thank you for sharing that. As a runner, both you and Cam highlighted just how you have to calculate all these things. For some people can just go on a leisurely run, and for others, you don't know if it's going to be the last run that you take. And exercise should not be considered lethal, and it should not lead to the loss of life. So I just thank you for highlighting that. Xavier, did we get to hear from you?
Yeah, I went first.
Okay, good deal. So I want to make sure we heard from everyone. Thank y'all so much for sharing, guys. You have such wisdom and insight, and I know that it's hard to imagine what it would be like to lose a loved one tragically, but it's also terrifying at the thought that that could be you. And so, April, do you have any questions for our fathers? April, you're muted, honey. So you over there giving us the business and we can't hear you.
I think that they've answered a lot of great questions and offered so much insight. The question that I had would take a whole lot of time. So I think that we'll just say that I don't have a question right now.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
So all the sons talked about what those names meant. I feel like if any fathers have something that they want to say about that, then I'd want them to have the floor as well. If I don't want to skip over that.
Do any fathers have something they'd like to say? That how do they feel when they hear those names? That's actually that's actually very intuitive, Melvin, because that's the question that Miss April had, was how do fathers feel when you hear those names?
Well, me personally, I feel like you know, that could have either been me or my son. It just really depends. You know, maybe not the situation, but you don't really know the situation. You know, I jog too, you know, and so I think that but it, you know, with it all happening, it's very tragic. But a lot of Black men, it's not surprising, if that makes any sense. It don't surprise me that it happened. Because I know that it's happening. I know every Black man on this thing has been pulled over or something has happened. It was like, I know this because I'm Black, but I ain't gonna just be saying it. But I know that it is, you know. And I had friends couldn't even, you know, he just wanted a truck with rims on it, but he got tired of getting pulled over just because his truck had rims on it. So he just put him in the garage, like, forget it. I ain't getting pulled over 2 times a week, you know, just because I got rims. And it's like, man, ain't nobody surprised by it. I'll just say that. And so it's tragic, and we want to teach our sons, you know, how to respond and not react. But at the same time, it's not a big surprise. That's all I'm gonna say.
And that's sad that it's not a surprise. It's sad that we've seen this so much that we become desensitized to it. It was the graphic nature of the murder porn of George Floyd that made it so bad. But we are so used to seeing Black men getting killed by police officers that we're not even surprised anymore. That's the sad part about this whole thing.
I want to speak to that. If it's okay, I'd like to also share my hashtag, so I didn't get a chance to.
Yes, please.
Um, I like acronyms, and so my hashtag is PAW, and that's I had help with my family with it. My wife says when she thinks of me as a dad, it's persevering, that I persevere. My son says I'm awesome, and my wife says warrior. So persevering, awesome warrior is my hashtag. I fight for my family. I bleed for them. I fight for my kids. I support them. And when it comes to my son, God has used him to heal an emotional father wound that I never knew I had. And when he was younger, he still does this. He would sit down and he would just caress my arm. Now, when he first started doing that, I was like, this feels weird. Why is he rubbing me? But what he was doing, he was being close to me, being intimate with me. I never experienced that with my dad. And so what God was showing me is that this is normal. And it broke my heart because I've never experienced that type of intimacy with my dad. And so me being able to experience that with my son has brought me to a place where I have this emotional relationship with him that I never had with my dad. And it has healed that father wound in me that I'm able to now invest in my son so that when he leaves my house, he is emotionally healthy, that he can identify when he's sad, when he's angry. And because when he was younger, when he would cry, I would say, stop crying. Now, cry, get it out.
Yeah.
Because I can't have him stuff emotions. And then when he gets married, he can't connect with his wife. So I'm raising him to be an emotional, healthy, black man who would know what he's feeling on the inside. Now with these deaths, and even with the death of Breonna Taylor, it's trauma for me. I can't watch the video. I watched a Ahmaud video and I was depressed for a week. I can't watch any of that stuff because it makes me angry. It takes me back to places I don't want to go. And it just takes me out because I see my son, I see my dad, my father-in-law, my uncles, my nephews, and it just breaks my heart. And I saw the image of that, and the hardest thing is that the cop actually enjoyed it, killing him. You can see that in his face. He enjoyed it.
That reminds me of something I would have said earlier, but you can see that it's like so obviously like not all cops are bad, right? But there are some cops where it's so clear that they enjoy like assaulting people. Like you can just see it in their actions and um how far they go and how far they push things that don't need to go that far in the light of these protests. And that's significant to me because it's, of course there's nuance, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do anything about it. I know that's not, I mean, I feel like I have to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Christians, it goes back to the Imago Dei and Genesis 1 and 2. And I think, if we're going to be, if we want reconciliation without actually telling the truth, and for the church in America, definitely the white church in America, the reason that racism was able to grow in this country is because the church didn't do its job in the very beginning when this country started. And so we can't get mad at the government. We need the blame layers at the foot of the church because she had a role in the forming of this country. And because she didn't do her job, we are now dealing with the things that should have been dealt with in the very beginning. So you got to tell the truth before you get reconciliation. And sometimes we don't want to tell the truth. And we have a lot of Christians have what I said on Sunday, a Play-Doh Jesus, and it ain't the real Jesus. And some of us need to meet the real Jesus for the first time. And some Christians have never met him. They have this idol that they worship. and it ain't the real Jesus. I'm done.
Thank you so much, Pastor Alex. We can concoct graven images for ourselves, but they don't get us closer to God, and they definitely don't bring us closer to one another. And as true ministers of reconciliation, truth is vital. Every other nation of the world, if they had crimes against humanity, you will go there and their monuments and their museums will tell their truth, not glorifying it, but exposing how gory it is so that it won't repeat itself. So I absolutely 100% agree that the role of the church, the responsibility of the church, the weight of the unrest that we're seeing can be attributed to the people who were called to tell truth that's supposed to make us free, concealing it, and that is why we've been bound. So I thank you all so much for sharing your hearts, sharing what those names mean to you. And I thank you, Pastor Alex, for referencing Breonna Taylor. I have Sandra Bland, Ayanna Stanley Jones, Katherine Johnston, Eleanor Bumpers, Deborah Danner. These are women who were killed, innocent women, mentally ill women, and it's important that we say their names as well. And I have an assignment, which you all know is not uncommon for Save Our Sons. Oftentimes, we receive our writing assignment prior to our meetings. This time, we're going to give you all some homework. There is a instructor of poetry whose cohort I recently had the honor of participating in. His name is Timothy Moore. He goes by Urban Thoughts. You can find him at Urban Thoughts 06 on Instagram, and you can find him at Urban Thoughts Poetry on Facebook. But this is an opportunity for you to share your narrative. And if you go to facebook.com/share the narrative, there is a writing prompt that he is given, and it is for a poem, for you to write a poem that is 1 minute in length. And the prompt is "If I Die by Cop." So April has written to this poem, and this is actually a call for men. But when I got the prompt, I could not resist writing to it myself. I wrote to it, April wrote to it. We are not going to share tonight simply because it took us to such a deep place and a vulnerable place and a raw place, and we'd have to have a whole nother panel discussion if we were to share. But because it was deeply meaningful and extremely therapeutic, I want you all to take this challenge. The hashtag is share the narrative. I think that this was a dual purpose call tonight. We had the opportunity to honor our fathers for Father's Day, which is more like just a commercial holiday, but every day is Father's Day in our household. Every day should be Father's Day as believers in Abba Father. And as we think about the many stories that have been shared, I want you to put yourself in the mindset of what would the world miss out on if you were to die by cop. And so the share the narrative, the premise is if I die by cop. And mine was if I die by cop, tell them I was a poet, though it took a long time for me to really know it. If I die by cop, tell them I was a preacher's kid and my daddy loved me no matter what I did. So it just goes down what the world would miss out on, or how my narrative, how I would want to tell my narrative in my own words if I was taken prematurely. I actually recorded this prior to me going to a protest, and I thought, Lord, I pray that I didn't just prophesy my own fate, but I think that it's riveting to be able to maybe shift a rigid paradigm by someone hearing what the world would miss out on if your life was to be senselessly taken. The people in your circle didn't know George Floyd personally, but they know you personally. And if they had to ponder what life would be like for them if your life was tragically lost, maybe it's enough for them to have the difficult conversations. So I'm thankful that we get to disagree without being disagreeable. It's all love when we have our hard conversations, our heavy conversations, but that's not the case for everyone with their coworkers. That's not the case for everyone with their neighbors. And so I just want you all to know, I thank you. We honor you. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for sharing your narrative in your own words. And most importantly, thank you for humanizing the Black man's plight. I think it's so deeply important that people be able to hear your story and find themselves in your story and see that the same things that matter to you matter to them. So we can stop having these triggers when we hear hashtag Black Lives Matter and just understand this father matters, this son matters. And because they are a human being, because they are a child of God, because they are an image bearer of Christ, they matter to me. So I thank you all for your time. We're going to close out our show with an opportunity for our viewers to see a film that our daughter Amaya, who's a 17-year-old, who just applied for Isabel Academy Film School yesterday. First of all, I just want to say I'm so proud of Duran Isbell for pursuing his dream. He is a young Black filmmaker who is opening up a film school. And it's an amazing opportunity to see many dreams come to fruition. So Duran, thank you for paving the way for so many children who will get to cultivate the arts and bring their stories to life as a result of your diligence. We have our Save Our Sons Sunraiser, which is our t-shirts. If you'd like to purchase them, Brian has a graphic up to instruct you on how to go about doing that. And we want to just acknowledge Amaya, Mighty Maya Productions. Please subscribe and share her video. It's powerful. If you go to youtube.com, you can just search for Mighty Maya Productions and you can find her. But it's amazing to see what the protests look like through the eyes of this 17-year-old filmmaker. This was the protest from last Wednesday, June 3rd, and she said it to Marvin Gaye's song, What's Going On? And guys, I want you, even the ones who are on the panel tonight, when you go back and you watch this and you listen to these lyrics on the playback, it is so fascinating how words that were written so long ago are so relevant to today. And so I believe Xavier brought that up. And I just want you all to know that what these kids are capable of, we can try to explain away some stuff, we can try to rationalize some stuff. But one thing that's so important, when I went to the Whitney Plantation, which is a plantation in Louisiana that is America's first slavery museum that tells the narrative through the eyes of the slaves and not the wealthy that own the plantation. But most importantly, it tells it through the eyes of children, because where people can get fixated on their agendas, one thing you cannot deny is when you teach our history to children, you cannot explain away the hideous acts that took place in our history. When you're talking to kids, there's just no way you can whitewash that. And so Amaya captured the protest through her eyes, and our last 6 minutes of our broadcast tonight will consist of that. So I thank each one of you. April and I, we don't have words to express how much you mean to us, but we honor your lives and we honor your sons, and we thank you for being the mighty men of valor that you are. We thank you for who you are and how you show up in the world, and we can't imagine our lives without you. April, is there anything you'd like to say?
I wanted to invite our scribes to an event called Prayers, Pens, and Perspectives. For those of you who want to protest with your pen and don't have a lot to say verbally, but you have a lot to write down, I invite you to come out on June 19th to 2820's The Living Room for a day of poetry and prayer with me. It's absolutely free, and you'll need to RSVP at Save Our Sons Huntsville. Seats are limited due to social distancing guidelines. We only have 15 spots and 2 sessions, so it's just first come, first serve. I hope to see some of you guys in the building. And thank you for tuning in.
Mother, mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, 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 there's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. Father, Father, we don't need to escalate. Oh, it's not the answer, for only love can conquer. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving. Oh, yeah, today. Picket lights, picket signs, punish me with brutality. Talk to me, honey, so you can see what's going on. What's going on? Hey, what's going on? Tell me what's going on. Woo! Come on here. Woo! Everybody thinks we're wrong, they do. But who are they to judge us? Simply cause our hair is people, you know, we've got to find a way to bring some understanding here today. Picket lights, picket signs. People don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me, so you can see what's going on. What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? Black, what's going on? All right. Oh, baby. What's going on? Wanna know, I wanna know. Ain't no pressure. Ain't no pressure. No peace. No lease. No lease. No lease. No peace. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. I wanna know what's going on, baby. Yes, I wanna what's going on right now, people. Oh, what's going on, brother? Tell me, yeah, what's going on? All right. Yeah.